Hi, everyone. This is Dave Horner with Small Town Life, and I've got an interesting group of individuals in here today. I've got 3 students from Little Falls High School, and they're involved in a competition to put together a 5-minute podcast about COVID and how it impacted their life over the course of 4 years, which I had not even thought about. So, Tanner, introduce yourself, talk a little bit, just for a second, about who you are and what grade you're at and what you're doing.
Hello, I'm Tanner Jaquay. I attend Little Falls High School. Like Dave said, I'm going to be going to Hobart College in the next college semester, and I don't know, not too interesting. I'm a COVID survivor, as we'll say.
All right. And over here I've got Connor. Go ahead and let me know a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I am Connor, and I also go to high school with Tanner and my best buddy Joey, as you can see right here.
Yeah, I can tell you guys dressed before you came over to the show, so that's always interesting.
I am also a survivor of COVID.
How about you, Joey?
My name is Joseph. I go to Little Falls High School, just like the 2 gentlemen sitting to my right, and I want to say I survived, but I endured COVID.
Yeah. So you guys have had some real interesting discussion about this, and I didn't realize the impact, and I don't think anybody out here as an adult really knew how this impacted you, because you ended up, the first time around, you had a couple of weeks off, and it was kind of out of nowhere, and you said, what, November, right?
Was it it was November or March?
I heard you say November, but I thought it was March.
I thought it was March as well.
Okay, all right. I heard the word November, and I was like, okay. And then you were off for the summer, and then all of a sudden you came back. So, Connor, tell me a little bit about what that was like, that experience of just, okay, you've got this kind of couple of 3 weeks of free time, and then what?
Yeah, it just hit us so fast. We never really expected it. It was just your teachers, there was rumor that there's this bad sickness that may come to the United States. We're not really sure. And then over the course of a couple of days, it got very serious. You started listening to the news and you hear all of this crazy stuff going on around us. And then one day, just poof, you never see your friends for another year and almost 2 years.
That's amazing. Joey, you thought it was nap time and game time, right? I mean, but then after a certain amount of time, what the heck happened?
I mean, eventually it was just time to get back to school. And I feel like that was the thing that was almost impossible. Once we had to actually get back to school, it was just awful. I mean, nobody knew what was going on. Teachers had to learn how to use computers. They had to figure out how to talk to students, keep them engaged. They had to face a plethora of new challenges that were unheard of. It was just a difficult experience for everyone all around.
Yeah. And Tanner, you had it kind of affected you physically and mentally, right? What was the story on that?
Oh, yeah, that was a rough story. Actually, if you go and listen to one of your stories, you do talk about it a little bit.
I do.
I say, yeah, freshman year, got the break. This is amazing, man. I get to sit home, play video games, eat chips, do whatever I want. Who cares?
A lot of chips.
Oh, chips, pasta, Italian family. That's what really did it.
Okay, all right.
Not to put the blame in anything, but, Italian love at its finest. But, yeah, 290 pounds was the grand total on the scale at the doctor's office.
And you came up from what? Where were you?
I was at about freshman year, first going into COVID, 200. So it was a 90-pound gain.
So you put 90 pounds on.
Which, hibernation at its finest, for sure. But that, and then just the mental health of it, you don't even really realize that it's happening to you. You deny it. I'm not 290 pounds. I was just 200. Like, oh, wait.
A minute ago.
It was more than a couple days ago. Yeah. And, yeah, definitely a big toll mentally, physically. And it really took the people around me it's kind of like a wake up. It's time to go. But COVID for everyone, I know I wasn't alone, and I know there's still people struggling with it to this day. It just doesn't go.
You mean the mental aspect?
The mental aspect, yeah. I feel like there's definitely people still affected by it because COVID completely changed mentalities to you find the hardest working people not just doing the bare minimum now because it's kind of like conditioning. It's every day they were told stay at home.
Yeah.
Stay at home. Don't go out. Don't go near people.
Don't do anything. Yeah.
And now it's trapped. It's like an isolated feeling, and it feels like it has to stay like that. But now that things have opened up, it really doesn't. And now's the opportunity to really get out there and change it.
Connor, do you think people are doing that? I mean, or do you think, I heard in some of your thoughts earlier, you were trying to think through it, but the thing that came to my mind was I thought people had become selfish. In other words, they turned in so much that now they're not wanting to go, even though we're open, they're not out anymore. What do you think? How did that impact you?
Yeah, I think that people just became way too lax when COVID hit, and now once we're kind of finding our way out of it, you still see people, they don't want to go out, they don't want to work, they don't want to put in the effort into society, and that's not good because everyone else can feel those effects. But if they're being lax and they're not paying attention to it, they're never going to feel those. And it's a very dangerous thing, but I think that once time goes on, we'll be able to find our way out of it. But right now, we're going to be hearing a lot.
I mean, Joey, how long do you agree with that? And how long do you think it's going to be before it's almost like a worldwide funk that we're in. I mean, can we pull ourselves out?
Truthfully, I do think we will eventually return to normalcy, but I believe that people are expecting it to happen a lot sooner than it actually will. A lot of people are looking at the high school students and middle school students and being like, oh, wow, yeah, these guys, they miss a year of their life. They miss a year of socialization. They're not as educated as they should be. They're not prepared for the real world. But I feel like we're not looking at the whole picture. Think of those preschool students. Think of kindergartners, anybody in elementary. They're not equipped to build upon the foundation that they have is missing. How are they expected to learn harder, more advanced concepts when they don't have the basic skills needed to?
Right, and you're talking about maybe basic math, basic just understanding of different subjects.
Exactly.
I mean, how are they going to do that, Tanner? You got any ideas on that?
I mean,
you have a younger sister.
I do have a younger sister.
She's dealing with that. There's a gap in her
is.
knowledge.
There's a big gap. You know, I'm not the brightest, so I'm gonna say my gap's always kind of been there. But like, I'm really noticing it with the younger kids. I'm like, wow. Like, I know I have family members and friends that have really young children. And they're really concerned because why is my child not speaking as much? Why is my child not being able to read this? Like, there's so many deficiencies in everything, and the teachers are starting to realize it. They're like, wow, you don't know how to do X, Y, and Z? Well, no, because they were never taught. It wasn't even brushed over. It was gone. But how to teach that, that's a whole different battle.
Right.
I mean, you can say... we can go off on one of Connor's kicks and say,
we can do that.
AI is coming in.
No.
AI is coming in.
We can go into that kick. That's one of my kicks too. So
it's
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But how to catch up with it, I really don't know, because people have said we got to add a 13th grade. So we need another grade, another year for these kids to get back. And I disagree with that. I feel like the best way to kind of combat it is to get them some after school hours. You can make it optional or not. Give them the outlets and the learning, like, accommodations they need to get back to where they should be. Because I feel like that's the best way, because you have young kids that haven't even started school that are going to go through school and not experience any of this. But you have that one group of kids in the middle that is right in it. They're in the worst spot. I feel like just the only way to really correct it is just accommodations to them.
Right. Connor, it's almost like there's two parts to this. One is the social skills, which was the fact that they didn't even talk to anybody, see anybody behind a video game, whatever they were doing. But there's also the knowledge loss. And that was because they went all virtual first, but really couldn't teach because nobody knew.
Yeah,
What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, when COVID first hit, it was new for everybody. Virtual was a brand new concept, so the teachers had to go on the fly, and they have 20 students in this virtual class that are just, one person has their camera on the ceiling. How are we going to make them pay attention? It's a very big task for the teachers, but then for the students, they're trying to keep up with the teachers. Maybe the teacher just forgets that everybody's virtual. It's not in person. They can't get the real like learning out of it. So a lot of students fell behind, and I think that I'm not sure. I think that it's difficult.
Well, is it, Joey, is it like the fact that, okay, has a gap widened because there were always smarter students and slower students? We've always had that, but did this just exacerbate the gaps, and now we're just trying to figure out how do we close them again to at least what was normal before?
See, I'm willing to argue that that gap that was already prevalent wasn't necessarily widened by the presence of COVID, but instead that those divisions, they stayed the same, but they're all dropped across the board. Because I feel like the kids that you would see as the prodigies, the ones who always have excelled, they're not performing where they should be.
Really?
And then those students who were doing poorly before, they've just fallen off.
Right. They're doing a lot worse.
They're barely hanging on.
It's interesting that you think that the ones that were the leaders to begin with also dropped off. I hadn't thought about that.
I say that primarily because I feel like I'm part of it. I mean, I grew up always being in AP classes. I was always one of those advanced kids. But once COVID came by, I felt like I was halted in many different ways. Taking some of the course load from this year, for example, I'm in AP chemistry. I feel like I'm building on a foundation that doesn't exist. I took chemistry online, virtual, and I didn't retain anything from it. So I'm building all those chemistry skills, and then the AP Chem ones on top. My workload's just harder than the kids from past years, just because they had more knowledge than me.
Right. Well, you're trying to catch up as well,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. What about you, Tanner? I know that Joey was saying that he had found the 90 pounds that you lost.
Yeah. I mean, opinions on the deviation of kids.
Yeah.
I'm gonna agree.
You think the
with
gap is worse, or
I don't think the gap is worse. I'm gonna go right off what Joey said, because I completely agree with him. I feel like that gap hasn't widened. Instead, it stayed the same, but it just moved the wrong way. It's the kids that, oh my gosh, you're ridiculously smart, 100, 100, 100. Now those kids are 90, 85, 90.
Really?
Yeah, and the kids that were always behind, like the 70s, 65 students, are now really in the danger zone, and it's just not a good spot for any of them. So I feel like you definitely have those kids, the really smart ones, that are going to continue to do good. Say right after COVID, they weren't affected, because they did stuff outside of the classroom to help them stay ahead. So you're definitely going to see instances of that. But I feel like for the majority of students, where you got the smart, the slow, the in the middle, that overall their performance is going to go downhill, or is already going downhill because of the effects of COVID.
So, Connor, all three of you had agreed earlier that you thought in-person was just the best way to learn.
Yeah.
That all of these different, from virtual to hybrid to whatever, just didn't do it for you, correct?
Yeah, well, I remember when virtual was a thing, it was just chaotic. So I wanted to go back, and that's when hybrid opened up. And hybrid was interesting because the teachers, they felt a little bit more comfortable teaching the students who were in class. However, those students that were still on the screen, it was hard to balance both in class and that screen and try and keep everybody involved in the same conversation. And I think that it's just like, for example, I'm in calc right now, and I have no idea what's going on with some of this like stuff that's getting handed to me. Like, I'm just behind, but I mean, it's COVID just messed up a lot of stuff.
Wow. Are a lot of kids in your same shoes as far as behind? And I mean, you've got Regents coming up, right?
Yeah, we have Regencies in almost 2 weeks.
Wow. And do you feel like you're prepared?
As prepared as I'll ever be. I'm going to go in with confidence, but I don't know.
Yeah. What about you, Joey? You said Joseph earlier. I guess I can be informal and say Joey, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay, all right.
With me, I have 2 AP exams coming up, being for calculus and AP chemistry. One of them I'm vastly more confident with than the other, being calculus because math has always been a natural strength of mine. But the AP chemistry one, not so much. I've been staying after school with our teacher, studying extra so I can hopefully catch up, just make that bridge of missing knowledge smaller. So I'm going to hopefully be able to do somewhat well so I can get that AP credit for college.
Yeah. Tanner, how do you think impact-wise on your future, what's the impact going into college? Because are they assuming you're at a certain level when you get there, or are they acknowledging the fact that you are maybe a 4.0 that's at a 3.5 level?
I feel like that really varies on the college you're trying to go to, because if you're applying for Harvard, they're not going to care. Obviously, everyone has a little bit of a soft spot for COVID, but it's the colleges that only take the best of the best aren't going to take, okay, well, maybe you did a little bit worse because of this. No, they still want the best. But then you have the colleges that took really good students that are like, oh my gosh, COVID really affected you guys. We're willing to go lower. And I really feel like it's the college's choice if they want to have the sympathy on the kids or not. Because, I mean, you can think of some colleges off the top of your head that only take 4.0s, all AP, all college credit kids. And then you can think of the ones that take, okay, you may not take all these classes, but you have good grades. You know, really for college, it's where you want to go, and it's the environment and like the culture of the college. Just being, are they going to kind of deviate from what they usually take for these people, or if they're just going to stay strict to what they've always, like their principles and what they stand on.
Connor, what are you intending to do after high school? Do you have college plans, or?
Yeah, I plan on going to a community college for cybersecurity, and then I'll probably transfer into a bigger 4-year school, save a little bit of money.
What about you, Joy?
Exact same thing.
Same
Connor
thing.
said.
Okay, all right. So we talked earlier before the show a little bit about some things that might help, and you brought up ChatGPT. And so I know that's, Connor, that's your hot button. Maybe yours, Joey, too. I don't know, but do you really think that could help close that gap? And if so, why?
Well, I think the reason the AI like ChatGPT, the reason that possibly could be a solution is because these students who are lacking those fundamental concepts for their courses that they're taking, maybe this AI, all it does is it just spits you out information. Earlier, I was trying to research some stuff for our own podcast, and I just had this AI generator spitting me out question after question. And I think that if students can be exposed to so much material, maybe they'll learn it, but it's up to the individual to learn that material.
Yeah, but would they be overwhelmed with so much coming at them? I mean, we did this one hockey podcast here, and it was Marty's Illegal Stick. And so he'd have a segment where he would ask questions about, historical kind of questions about hockey players. And my answer always was Gretzky or some famous name, because I didn't know anything about hockey. But a couple of times I would cheat. I'd sit down there and Google because he wouldn't let me see the questions ahead of time. I can see where ChatGPT would have really helped me on his questions. I would have had these in-depth answers for that. But student-wise, these kids, all of that coming at them, and one of the key things being that how do you know that the information is accurate? Because we had talked about earlier that some of it's not accurate. Tanner, they have all of this coming at them. They ask ChatGPT, and it's all coming at them. How do they sift through that? How does that help them?
I mean, I'm going to say it's tough because AI is also not foolproof. Like, Joey's probably the one to ask this question with the hallucinations like he was talking about, where the AI thinks, well, yeah, this is actually something. This is what I'm quoting it from. And then you actually look into it, and it's just not real. So I feel like for now, since it's not kind of foolproof, you need to look deeper into everything the AI tells you.
Well, it's interesting that you're calling them hallucinations when I would call it bad data.
That's not my
you're
term.
You're adding a personality to this thing already. We're worried about this, and it's be careful. It's just having hallucinations. It's having a bad day.
That's what the Google people are saying.
Do not listen to Google. They are evil. All right?
So the reason we know a decent amount of stuff on this topic is because in our government and economics class, we talked about how AI is going to change the economy. And we watched a video, and it was two people from Google that talked about the hallucinations and how it could go wrong and bad data. And it just kept using that word and wouldn't use like it messed up. It was always, it hallucinated.
Well, did you listen to their CEO saying that he doesn't know how it works? Did you see that interview? The CEO of Google says, we do not understand how this works, which should scare the crap out of you, right, Joey?
Oh, it does. I mean, if you really look at it, Google didn't invent this technology.
No.
They're just piggybacking on people. Like,
Microsoft came out with it first, and they had to.
exactly.
Do you want to talk about remember the Bangladesh thing? The language?
Oh yeah, there was AI. What happened was this. Basically, somebody was doing as I would have done, and they asked a AI generator a question, except it was in Bangladesh, so it wasn't in English.
It wasn't taught this
Yeah,
language.
it was never. The data was not put into the system.
Right.
However, it was able to somehow figure out, and it answered, and within 5 seconds it created.
It had
this
an
awesome
iteration
answer.
of Dan running, right?
Yeah.
Which is how it breaks out of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's scary.
Taught its own
weird.
language.
Yeah.
Learned the whole language.
Learned a whole language faster than I can think.
I will tell you that I want to say it was in the 80s or 90s or somewhere. There was early AI going on way back. There was a program out. I cannot remember the name of it, but something that I was using at that point in time. And even that was a little bit scary. But what you were doing was you would put questions in and you would put a number of potential answers in. And so that's how it would sound intelligent. But you had to think ahead of time of what are all the potential answers. And yes, we did have the internet back then. It was called ARPANET. But anyway. So, Joey, what do you think about, is there a technology solution to this, or do you think we're going to have to go back to basics kind of thing? More in person, more one-on-one. You're getting extra help after school hours. Is it going to be a technology answer, or is it going to be a human answer to solve the problem?
You know, referring back to what Connor said, I'm willing to actually take the complete opposite stance. I believe technology is actually going to make this divide worse. Just because students, they're going to be overwhelmed with their homework, and I wrote a paper on this actually.
Oh, that's where I was kind of going with the amount of knowledge that when you ask a question, the amount of knowledge that comes back at you it can be overwhelming, and you have to fact check it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So-
So what help is that?
Think of it, the way I wrote my paper is it was talking about, is homework an efficient way to learn? Now think of it this way. If somebody's missing gaps in their knowledge and what they're supposed to know, a teacher's going to assign homework corresponding to it. If a student doesn't want to do said homework, what are they going to do? They're going to cheat. They're going to use ChatGPT in order to get those answers.
I want you to say that 3 times real fast.
Oh my God.
I see. Joe's going to have a meltdown.
Oh my God, I
ChatGPT.
Saying it once is challenging.
Okay.
But no, they're using tools in order to get away from actually learning. So that homework not only isn't efficient, it's just another stressant that could possibly make them break down more and cause them to learn even less.
I'm almost there with you because, like I said earlier, that I had used it for a couple of things to see if it could do a news article. But then I realized, well, I can't do it because the data, and I'd have to cross-check everything. And if I wrote it myself, I'd do it 100 times faster than this darn thing. But on generic articles where it's like, for instance, one I talked about the growing season in Little Falls and when's the best time to plant, looking at historical data and things like that, it pulled up a lot of useful information. I had somebody cross-check it who's an expert in that area, and they said, no, this is accurate. So it could be used for that, but I see where you're coming from, where there would be kids that would want to be lazy, let's say. And this is my answer. I go to ChatGPT and I type in a bunch of questions and I get answers and I turn this in and that's good enough. and it's not. It's really not. Now that he's tore you up here a little bit, Connor, what do you, do you want to defend yourself?
Well, I mean, I can definitely see that side because AI, it's not foolproof yet. So we're just we're experimenting. Like we have a little chat bot on Snapchat now, and you can have a conversation with it. But it's just those conversations can fall apart fast because the responses can be very counteractive sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that it definitely can be a lot of information for a student to retain. And
yeah.
I can definitely see what Joey's saying here.
What do you think about the impact a bunch of people got together, Elon Musk leading the pack and saying, look, we need a 6-month hold on this. Chat 3.5 is kind of the one out to everybody. 4.0, if you want to pay $20 a month, is out there, but they're working on 5. Do you think that's valid? Do you think anybody's going to pay any attention to the 6-month hold? Joey, you want to start? We'll go around the room.
I feel like it's really hard to say because a lot of people who have interest in AI, they're going to reach out to it. They're going to play with it. They're going to figure out its limitations and abilities. They're going to research it. But for the people who are afraid of it or perhaps don't have interest in it, I feel like it's not going to affect them at all, rather than maybe news coverage. So they might look at it that way. And once again, it almost seems like a fear tactic in a way. News channels may push it as something that's super negative, and then people are going to get afraid. They're going to get paranoid. I see it as a very promising tool. Whether it's going to be used for good or malicious intent, we're not sure yet.
You know, I'd heard an interesting thing about the news people, that they are concerned that they will lose their job. And so that's why they're writing negative stories about it.
And honestly,
is in order to protect their job, to say, look, this is bad stuff, and you don't want to trust this, you don't want to whatever, because they believe that it will be able to go out and scour the internet and come up with a story as it gets more and more sophisticated, where newsrooms won't need to exist anymore, which they've already taken a huge hit, and that may be part of the I haven't researched that, but that's one of the theories out there.
No, yeah, I mean, that negative agenda, it makes sense, because I feel like it's similar to like the Industrial Revolution looking at it, because back then jobs were replaced. I feel like in this technology era that we're in, another similar thing will come across. AI is going to be able to replace many jobs, especially those lower skill positions where you just need idea people. Like, I mean, you can put in a prompt and get 70 ideas in a matter of seconds, and you don't even have to pay anyone.
Right. Yeah. Connor?
Yeah, it's very scary, AI. It's just a lot to handle.
Should we have the pause? Should it be 6 months? Should it be more? What do you think?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think that stepping away from it, I think, would be a good idea. Kind of people can learn how dangerous this stuff can be, but then I also don't think it's a bad idea to expose people to it slowly and maybe get them used to it before you give it full throttle.
Maybe make up a few rules first before, especially in the school environment where, like you say, they're not going to take your phones away from you at school, but they don't know what kind of teachers are not keeping up with the technology you have on your phone. There's actually a Snap GPT app as well. So you could be calling that up and you could use it to actually get questions to tests, or if you're struggling on your chemistry or whatever, if it gets to that level, you just sit there and just get the answer to it. So maybe a pause, and then how do we implement this? Tanner, you just want to see it go, right? You don't care.
You see, you're talking about
well, I know we're way over your head there, but do you want to pause on this though? You can answer that because it's going to affect you, your children, whatever.
I don't know exactly why they're pausing. I'm not a tech person.
That's okay.
Like all of you in the room.
Well, they're pausing because they're concerned that it's going too fast, it's learning too fast.
But I can see the pros and cons of it. But what if this? Why don't you want to just let it keep going? Say, run it for 6 months, and then if it gets too far, just shut it down.
Yeah, but then how do you do it? I mean, we all remember the Terminator movies and everything, right? I mean, you reach that point. There was someone who asked it, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember the specific question about how would you destroy the human race. Did you read that, Joey?
I've heard about it. I haven't personally.
Yeah, well, I read the article about it, and it talked about gathering up and using nuclear weapons and stuff. At this point, it was smart enough to know how to get rid of us, and that was one of the more spooky things I'd read. Was that exchange? You want to rethink your answer, Connor?
Yeah, I do. Let's just get rid of it all.
No.
Well, thinking for the future, because I want to go into teaching for my career, and now thinking about what the teachers have to deal with now, hey, Snapchat AI, you want to give me the answers to the economics test? Yeah, sure, here you go. Like seeing that in the future, I feel like it's way too much of a crutch, and if it advances more, like you said, how do you take out the human race? I don't want to be dealing with that.
Yeah, but you are.
I am.
We talked about this. 10 years from now, where is it going to be?
You got to think it's all online, too, so if it has access to your phone, it has access. Say gets to the point where, hey, I text Joey. Well, now it's got Joey's phone. It's crazy because the internet is connected to everything. Yep. So what's stopping it once it makes? I don't even know. Does it even have a mind? If it makes up its mind, it's like, oh, you pissed me off today. We're bombing the world. Like,
you're done.
I feel like just stopping it, just cut it off. And if you're really looking at AI and like economic standpoint and you want to find more automation for stuff, go down that road, put the limits, but don't keep testing it because don't poke the bear. Yeah. That's the biggest thing.
Well, somebody will, I think.
Oh, of course.
All right. It's been fun, guys. I've had a good time. It was a good discussion. I kept it to 30 minutes to show you how we keep it to 30. And, we can kind of do a little intro, exit music. And, we'll come back next time with Small Town Life. Small Town Life. I didn't even say that right. Chat GPT, right?
Yeah.